Have you ever wondered why people can be so different online or in a big crowd? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive into a really fascinating theory that looks at what happens to our identity when we're anonymous. And let me tell you, it's probably not what you think. So, let's kick things off with a question that I bet you've asked yourself before. Why is it that someone who's normally super polite can suddenly transform their behavior when they're in a crowd or hiding behind an anonymous screen name? It's a genuine puzzle, right? All right, let's dive into section 1, the anonymity puzzle. To really get to the bottom of this, we've first got to understand why being anonymous has such a powerful grip on us. I mean, just think about it for a second. We see it everywhere. Social media with fake names, anonymous comment sections, online gaming where you're just an avatar, or even just being one face in a massive protest. In all these situations, who we are as an individual, it kind of fades into the background. Anonymity clearly has a huge effect on how we act. But what is that effect, really? Okay, on to section 2, an old theory. For a long time, psychology had a pretty straightforward and, let's be honest, kind of pessimistic answer to this puzzle. Let's take a look at the classic theory. It was called Deindividuation theory, and the core idea was pretty simple. When you're anonymous, you lose a part of yourself. Your sense of who you are, your self-awareness, it just sort of evaporates. And the result? Well, the theory predicted that people would basically go wild and start breaking all the rules. The thinking went something like this. If nobody knows who you are, then your internal brakes just stop working. You're not able to, or maybe you're just not motivated to, control your own impulses anymore. You stop following the normal rules of society because the part of you that cares about those rules has, for all intents and purposes, been switched off. You can really boil this whole theory down to a super simple 3-step chain reaction. Step 1, you find yourself anonymous in a group. Step 2, this makes you lose your self-control. And the final inevitable result, step 3, you engage in chaotic behavior that goes against the grain. It seems to make sense, but there's a huge problem with it. Which brings us to section 3, the evidence doesn't sit. You see, the problem is, when researchers actually started looking at how people behave in the real world, this neat little theory, well, it started to fall apart. The evidence just didn't line up. And this is a big one, because it really challenges our gut feelings. We tend to picture crowds as these chaotic, dangerous mobs, but the historical data, it shows that's the exception, not the rule. Most of the time, large groups of people, even really passionate ones, are surprisingly orderly. Now, this points to the biggest flaw in that old theory. Even when crowds do get violent, their actions are often highly organized. They're disciplined and aimed at very specific targets. That's the complete opposite of just a random, chaotic loss of control. It suggests something else is going on entirely. So, this is the real turning point in the story. If being anonymous doesn't just make us lose our minds and go crazy, then what is it doing to us? What's the actual mechanism here? And that leads us right into our next section, a new theory. This brings us to a much more modern and more accurate picture of what's happening. It's called the social identity model of de-individuation effects, which, is a mouthful, so we'll just call it the side model. Now, the side model flips the old idea completely on its head. It argues that anonymity doesn't make you lose your identity at all. Instead, it makes you shift it. You stop thinking of yourself as an individual, as a me, and you start thinking of yourself as part of a collective us. So let's just make this crystal clear. The old theory was all about a loss. It saw anonymity as a process of subtraction, where your sense of self just kind of vanishes into thin air. But the side model, the new theory, is all about transformation. It's not about becoming less of yourself. It's about becoming a different part of yourself, the part that connects and identifies with the group you're in. And this is where it all comes together. The old theory said anonymity causes a loss of self, which leads to chaos. You become less yourself. But the side model says anonymity causes a shift to your social identity, leading you to follow that group's norms more closely. You become more us. And here's the really wild part. This explains why an anonymous group of nurses might become more caring, while an anonymous group of soccer hooligans might become more aggressive. See? Anonymity doesn't just unleash the worst in us, it can also amplify the best, depending on the group's script. So why is this whole losing versus shifting identity thing so important? Well, because it has absolutely huge implications for our modern world, and especially for our digital lives. The side model isn't just some abstract theory for a textbook. It's actively being used to understand a huge range of things we deal with every day, from how we work together in online teams and build virtual communities, to understanding protests and collective action, and even the psychological effects of surveillance. It gives us a powerful new way to see our connected world. So, here's the big takeaway from all this. When you're anonymous, you don't become less sensitive to social rules. In fact, you often become more sensitive to the specific cues and norms of your chosen group. Your behavior isn't just some random outburst, it's guided by the online tribe you feel a part of at that moment. And that leaves us with one final thought, a question for you. The next time you're anonymous online, whether you're gaming or commenting or whatever, just ask yourself, which group self am I shifting into right now? What are its rules? Because according to the side model, that's what's really guiding your actions.